I Ain't Got No Ack-cent by Conner Cogwork. When Rarity is overwhelmed with making designs for an agriculture expedition, she turns to Applejack for advice, but when she gives Applejack a hairstyle treatment in return, the apple farmer lets her accent slip from a southern drawl to sophisticated Manehattenite. The result? More fancy parties than you can shake a candy apple at. Carousel Boutique was currently a seamstress's nightmare. There was a reason for this. Not 3 minutes ago, the proprietor of the establishment had a visit from a very influential customer. Said customer had congratulated said proprietor on a commissioned piece that was made for an upcoming agriculture expedition. They were impressed enough that they wanted the proprietor to join them at the expedition and showcase their wares. The proprietor had said yes. Now the proprietor is wondering what in Celestia's great kingdom she's gotten herself into. Let's watch, shall we? I can't do this! Rarity had been panicked before, delusional, worked to the bone, but outright clueless hysterics was a real rarity for her. What was I thinking? She ranted, pacing her shop floor with a haunted look in her eyes. Spread across every spare surface of the boutique were dozens upon dozens of paper scraps, each one with a differing dress design. Here and there, her mannequins had pieces of cloth pinned to them in haphazard shapes. The only other living being in the shop, with the unicorn, was a chubby white Persian, who battered a stray piece of paper every now and then, but otherwise seemed uninterested in whatever it was Rarity was spouting at her. The Equestrian Agriculture Conference and Expedition is one of the biggest gatherings of some of the richest ponies around, outside of the Grand Galloping Gala, Rarity continued, glasses askew on her muzzle. I would be a madman to let this chance to showcase my abilities pass. But oh, Celestia, Opal, what do I make? Her eyes roamed the countless sketches that were littered around her. Farmers, harvesters, millers, woodcrafters, work ponies, and chefs. They're all such no-nonsense types. How can I possibly design anything that would appeal to them? The chefs, maybe, but that's such a narrow range. Oh, I must simply figure out something. The expedition is only 2 weeks away. With a melodramatic sigh, she sat in front of her desk, 4 limbs splayed out atop the surface. Opal sat herself next to one of the white hooves and looked at Rarity expectantly. Oh, I know, Opal. I have to get a hold of myself. But really, I told Mr. Marmalade that I would be prepared with 10 of my best dresses, while in reality I've only got 2 in stock that would even remotely fit in, and one of them I'd rather not have see the light of day again. She grumped, crossing her hooves and resting her chin on them. The cat gifted her with an offended glance, before nonchalantly trotting over to a dark blue bundle of fabric, leaping onto it and tucking her paws in, taking extra care to shed an extra few white tufts of fur onto its surface. Yes, you're right, I've got to move past this. Funk, the designer quipped, lifting her head back up. I've bounced back from worse than this. Surely I can rise to the challenge. Yes, I'm sure I can. The burst of good mood was quickly dampened by a bout of rational thought. Oh, who am I kidding? She wailed again, telekinetically grabbing Opal from her perch and burying her face into the frustrated feline's fur. I can't possibly know what goes through a farmer's mind when they see an outfit like mine, the only one I could ever get an opinion from. She was interrupted by a rapid knocking at her door. She dropped Opal, who scampered off to safety. With a quick wipe of her eyes and an adjustment to her glasses, Rarity trotted towards her entrance, quickly banishing her early mood for a later date. Coming! The handle lit up, and the door swung open. The white unicorn stood, closed eyes and a smile to her face. Welcome to Carousel Boutique. I am Rarity. Is there anything I can help you with? Y'all can start by not doing that every time I come round, you know, said a familiar light-hearted southern twang. Applejack! The unicorn exclaimed, letting her eyes snap open. Indeed, it was the orange farmer filly, customary hat perched on her head, and a saddle pack strapped to her midsection. What brings you to my shop today? These do, AJ replied, motioning her head towards the pack. I recall Sweetie Belle asking for a right big case of these apple fritters. Last time I brought 'em to one of Pinkie Pie's parties. I couldn't rightly say no to her little old face, so I baked up a bunch of them this morning. Can I come in and drop 'em off? As Applejack continued to speak, Rarity found herself straining harder and harder to resist speaking out against the Applebucker's atrocious grammar. I know she was raised on a farm, she told herself, but she could really have a better handle of the equestrian language than that. Even Rainbow Dash has better diction. She kept silent, however, and as the question was asked, she put out her best smile and stepped back. Of course, dear, just leave them on the counter. I'll be sure Sweetie Belle sees them when she gets home from school today. Much obliged, was the reply she got as the farm pony trotted inside. As the unicorn closed the door behind them, there was a pause before addition. What in tarnation happened here? You working on another dress, Rarity? Her mess of papers had been spotted. There was a sigh as the white one turned around to look at her friend, catching the orange equine looking at one of the papers in particular. There was a moment of blankness, then a moment of scrutiny, followed by a moment of enlightenment. Applejack! The dressmaster gasped out breathlessly. The farmer turned her head to look at her friend. Yeah? The next portion of the conversation did not involve words so much as it involved a unicorn tackling an earth pony with a rib-shattering hug, all while screaming out, Applejack, you really are an angel in farmer's clothing! Applejack would only wince as her spine popped. Before croaking out, Beg pardon? I don't know why I didn't think of it earlier, but you're exactly what I need. With your eye for the practical and my fashion knowledge, surely we would both be able to get all these dresses done in 2 weeks' time before the expedition even starts. Oh, Applejack, I just can't believe what good fortune brought us together on this day. It must be destiny. Whoa, on there, partner, the farm pony drawled before managing to push Rarity off of her. Y'all want to back up there and explain to me why you mentioned me and dresses in the same sentence. Oh, I do apologize, the unicorn said, straightening her glasses again and calming down. But I really do need your help. You see, I had a customer earlier today. He was quite overjoyed with one of my creations, you see. There was a roll of green eyes which was caught. Now, let me finish. He was so enthralled by my design that he asked me to accompany him to set up a display at this year's Equestrian Agriculture Conference and Expedition. Now she had the orange pony's attention. The EACE? Wowee, that there's the cream of crop for all the farmers over Equestria. I'd love to set up a sweet apple acres out there, that's for certain. I bet I'd even do real business this time round. A dark look crossed her face as memory of the Galloping Gala fiasco resurfaced. At least those ponies know a good apple when they see one. Indeed, Rarity chuckled, before she became all business again. However, the dilemma I'm faced with is simply that I've never made a whole line of outfits directed towards the farming and agricultural community. And I need to have 10 different dresses, and I need to have at least 10 different dresses and suits ready in time for the expedition, which is going to be held in 2 weeks. There was a low whistle. While at my whiskers, y'all sure do have your work cut out for you. Don't you still have the 2 outfits y'all made for me? I think they'd be surefire popular with the convention folks. I was planning on using your gala dress, the white pony started, though she pawed at the floor with her hoof. But the other one, I know your expertise went into its design, but do you really think it would be popular at the expedition? Well, it could probably do with an overhaul, but yeah, with a little fixin', it'll be a right good hit, I'd reckon. Now Applejack got on all 4 hooves as she clopped over to Rarity, an eager look on her face. Well, what'd you need my help with? I ain't any good with needle and thread, you know, but if you're looking for what a farmer looks for in an outfit, she gave a wink, hinting at an unspoken request. The unicorn's eyes shimmered with gratitude, and the farm pony had to brace herself for another bone-crunching hug. Oh, thank you, Applejack. I'll be sure to tell my client that I'll be bringing another pony with me for personal refreshment. There'll be no way he could possibly refuse, especially after he tastes some of your famous apple fritters. She released her hold on the poor Applebucker and gave her a long, thankful gaze. You can't believe how much this means to me. 'Tain't nothin', Rarity. Now, if y'all don't mind, I'd appreciate you letting go of me, and let's getting down to business. There was a pained smile. Okay, tell me again why we doing this? It's simple, Rarity began. as she levitated a brush over to her subject's mane. "If you and I are going to be working together, the both of us need to be on level ground. And while I may not be afraid to get my hooves dirty, unarguably, the one who needs the most grooming is you. So before we get started on any kind of dress, we need to make you good and presentable." Applejack groaned, but made no move to budge. She had taken a shower that morning, and was grateful that her friend hadn't seen the need to inundate her in a sea of bath salts and exotic perfumes. However, she was unable to get away from a good mane combing, and so she stared forlornly at a stuffed mannequin that was wearing her pappy's hat and hairband. "I can do this," she thought to herself. "Rarity's giving me a chance that I won't be able to get otherwise. I just need to hold out and let her do what she feels is best, even if it is, or rather, frou-frou." The unicorn made a humming sound as she brushed the knots of the farmer's blonde hair. She tilted her head and studied the fall of golden strands for a moment. Then, with a smile and a whim, she levitated a spritzer bottle over and began to douse the applebucker's mane. Now, hang on there," AJ started, alarm creeping into her voice. "Don't you go cutting anything, you hear? I'd like to keep it for the show, if you know what I—" "Relax, Applejack," Rarity soothed, placing a hoof on her shoulder. She was trying hard not to turn the reassurance into a critique on grammar. "I'm only having a bit of fun. I won't cut anything, I promise. But you'll look so more high class after this, I tell you." High class, sophisticated. She's just having fun, the earth pony told herself. "'Tain't anything permanent. Just relax." She found herself grimacing at the brushing. After a minute or so, the white one stepped back from her work and gave Applejack an appreciative smile, before motioning her to turn her head one way and then another. "Perfect," she beamed. "Now it just needs one last touch." "Ah, I know." A nearby wardrobe opened up and a box floated out of it. As it stopped by the unicorn, the top hovered upwards and the contents floated out. A gold necklace with a bright pale blue gemstone embedded in the center. It took the orange pony a second to recognize it as Rarity's element of harmony. "This is just for now," Rarity stated, before the necklace floated to Applejack and secured itself around her neck. "Perfect! Okay, Applejack, come on over here." She got to all fours and followed her friend over to the other side of the room, where a full-length mirror awaited. With a triumphant grin, the unicorn pulled it in front of her subject. "Behold! A diamond in the rough." AJ could not believe her eyes. It wasn't so much that her friend's element was hanging around her neck. It was the hair that had her attention, styled up in a bun, bunched up, leaving only a small amount hanging down her neck and in front of her eyes. Last time her hair had been like this, it was back when she was a filly. She saw her younger self in that reflection. Young, sophisticated Manehattenite Applejack. The necklace gave her an air of elegance that suited the adult form that was looking back at her. Dear Celestia, what would Aunt and Uncle Orange think of her now? She found herself speaking in Manhattan to have been the hardest part of being sophisticated. Could she even do it still? She wasn't certain it would look right to have a regular voice tumbling out of the visage in front of her. What was one to do? She found herself clearing her throat. "I say, what a wonderfully exquisite look you have there, madame. Is that necklace what I think it is? Oh my, it looks it, doesn't it? An element of harmony. Oh dear, you must simply tell me the tale of how you obtained that rare prize. It would be an honor to have you as my guest." She smiled at herself. That wasn't too hard. Thump! She turned her head to the source of the noise, in time to see Rarity doing an impressive impression of a snake who had unhinged her jaw from her head and had allowed it to drop to the floor. On top of that, she had somehow managed to make all color disappear from her irises, the pupils having shrunk to tiny black dots that were locked on her. "Oh, crab apples!" Applejack cursed to herself. "I just said all that out loud, didn't I?" She took a hesitant step towards her friend. Rarity?" she asked, her normal twang back in place. There were a couple of blinks before the jaw ascended and locked itself back into place. Applejack?" she stammered, eyes still riveted on the earth pony. "You're right, Sugar Cube. I don't... Applejack! The unicorn appeared to be grasping for breath. Your voice! How? When did... Applejack looked down, a guilty look now on her face. I don't reckon I ever told you the story of how I got my cutie mark, have I? You've been to Manhattan? I told ya, the Earth Pony answered, a frustrated blush on her cheeks. I was just a silly little filly at the time. I didn't know any better. Applejack, please! Rarity rolled her eyes disbelievingly. Do stop talking about going to one of the most cultured cities in all of Equestria, second only to Canterlot, as if it was some sort of big mistake. But it was, AG argued. If I hadn't seen Rainbow Dash's sonic boom when I did, I'd probably still be stuck up there, in some frou-frou dress, high nobbin with my aunt and uncle, and where would the farm be then, huh? Apple Bloom. She would have grown up without ever knowing her own sister. I barely escaped from that city with my life. And ponies say I'm the melodramatic one, the dressmaker sighed under her breath. Listen, AJ, nobody can disagree that you made the right choice in going back to your farm. I'm certainly not in the least. What I am confused about is why you've buried all your proper high-class training your orange family gave you after you came back. 'Tweren't me, the farmer replied, her eyes now directed to the shop floor. All that sophisticated nonsense didn't do jack squat for me in the end. And how exactly would I go about using it on the farm? Better to forget the whole thing ever happened. Oh, no, was the comeback she got. My dear, you simply do not know the tools you have at your disposal. This was quickly followed by the unicorn rushing over to her and taking her hooves into her own. If you could use that cultured grammar in presence of royalty and the rich, you could have doors open to you that you never would have believed. Oh, darling, let me hear it again. You must not have used it in so long, and yet there was no hint of your accent. Accent? What accent? Rarity blinked. Why, I mean your everyday speech, Applejack. Surely you don't. There was a honk of noises as the orange equine leaned in and gave her an emerald glare. What you talking about, Rarity? I ain't got no gosh darned accent. She raised a hoof and was about to comment on the impressive stringing of a double negative, but it was then that there was a quick rapping at the front door. She gave Applejack a shush motion before trotting over to the entrance and opening up. Greetings and welcome to Carousel. Oh, Mr. Marmalade, what a pleasant surprise. The unicorn backed up and allowed a tall, burnt orange stallion to trot inside, a short-trimmed brown mare and tail swishing behind him. Besides the overcoat he was wearing, he had a cutie mark of a jar of jam. Madame Rarity, I do apologize for the intrusion, but I just simply could not contain myself. I had heard word of your legendary speed in your craft, and so I wondered if you already had any designs sketched out. She pawed at the ground and glanced over at the pile of papers that the mess from earlier had been hastily arranged in. I've got several ideas on paper, yes, but nothing final. She quickly glanced around her shop before letting her eyes rest on her blonde companion. Oh, I was just consulting with an expert in the agriculture field before I decided on anything. Let me introduce you. Applejack had been watching the entire exchange in silence, trying to make herself unobtrusive. However, her endeavour in stealth was quickly put to pasture as the unicorn brought the dapper male over to the mirror. This is a close friend of mine, Rarity began, her voice filled with pride. She owns one of the biggest apple farms this side of Canterlot. She may be a little rough around the edges, but trust me, she's absolutely divine. My ears are burning over here, Sugar Cube, AJ thought to herself. I say, Mr. Marmalade exclaimed, allowing his eyes to roam up and down Applejack's form, causing the filly to blush slightly. What a picture of elegance! Hard to believe that you're a farmer. What's your name, madame? My name? There was a motion to the stallion's right. Rarity was shaking her head, a panicked look in her eyes. AJ raised an eyebrow. What did she want? Now the unicorn had brought her hooves up together, in prayer form, a pleading look on her face. Beads of sweat were appearing on her brow. Oh, that's what she wants. The entire exchange appeared to have gone unnoticed by Mr. Marmalade. The farm pony turned socialite gave herself a silent sigh, before clearing her throat and again letting the Manhattan out. "My name is Applejack, good sir, and you must be the client that Rarity has told me so much about." "Oh!" was the response she received, his face lighting up in pleasant surprise. "So cultured for one so young. Yes, I am that same said client. My name is Mr. Mango Marmalade, and I run a preserving facility outside of Philadelphia. I have a spot reserved for me at the EACE. Perhaps you've heard of it." It was exactly this kind of high-powered boasting speech that grated on the farmer's nerves in the first place, but she simply nodded. "I have indeed, sir. Every farmer pony in Equestria worth their apples has heard of the expedition. I myself would love to attend and display my own wares." "Applejack is the proprietor of Sweet Apple Acres," Rarity spoke up, trotting over to one of the saddle packs that was brought in earlier. A flap opened, and out came a warm apple fritter. Her skills in the ways of apples and baked goods are simply unparalleled. She arrived here this morning with a pack of these apple fritters. I insist that you try one, Sir Marmalade. You won't regret it." Applejack grinned, silently berating herself for a slip-up. This does smell exquisite," the stallion breathed as the fritter was floated over to him. He took it in his own hoofs, and daintily he took a bite. There was much chewing and humming. Before his eyes opened in amazement, the rest of the treat vanished at a speed that would have even amazed certain blue pegasi. "Marvelous!" he boomed, before reaching for the apple farmer's hooves and holding them in his own. "Madame Applejack, that treat was simply amazing. Should Miss Rarity wish to bring you to the expedition, make no mistake, I would be in full 100% backing of my decision. Why, I'll even rent out extra space for your own stand. Oh, so much to do." The mares could only stare as the business pony paced the floor in apparent excitement. "I have to call the management. I must simply inform the caterers too. They'll have to be able to coordinate with your people. I wonder if the people next to us would lend out their spot. If not, I'll simply buy them out." He suddenly turned and galloped towards the door, any earlier intention of seeing dressed signs now having fully blown away on the breeze. "I apologize, mesdames, but there is so much to do in order to properly prepare. I shall return when I have all the arrangements secured. Until then, toodaloo, my dears." "Toodaloo," Rarity and Applejack echoed, waving their forehooves with blank expressions on their faces. The boutique doors squeaked slightly from the stallion's hasty departure. A few seconds of silence passed before the two looked at each other. Slowly the farmer's face evolved into a look of shock and disbelief, while the dressmaker's turned into joy and pride. Did he just say, "Oh, Applejack"? There was more cringing and squeezing of the earth pony. "Darling, I'm so proud of you. You brought out your cultured side, and you shone like a star. And now we're both going to be heading for the expedition together." There was a groan. I can't believe he actually invited me." "But of course he did, AJ. You made a glowing, exemplary impression on him, and he couldn't help but be swayed into sampling your wares. And now our next stop is one of the richest and influential conferences in all of Equestria, outside of the gala, I know," came back the drawl, back in full force. She managed to peel the white pony off of her long enough to catch her breath and check her person for bruises. "And believe me when I say getting to go to the EACE is going to be one of Sweet Apple Acres' finest moments, but I think I'd probably best leave the theater talk behind." "You can't," came an explanation. "Applejack, these are high-class ponies. They'll be expecting nothing less than the best from you. From both of us." Self-consciously, a hairbrush was levitated over before it began combing at the unicorn's purple locks. "If you drop your culture training even for a second at the expedition, we will be sure to be chased out." "You can't be serious," the earth pony retorted, an eyebrow arched in disbelief. "Nothing like that ever happened at the gala." "Oh, we had far worse things to worry about that night." A roll of the eyes. "But That's besides the point. The reality of our situation is rather simple, if you must know. Applejack reached behind to unhitch the element from around her neck before looking at it. Slowly it dawned on her exactly what her friend had meant. You mean, since I talked to him like that? Rarity nodded as she took the necklace back and put it away. From now on, we are going to practice that voice, young lady. Mr. Marmalade will be certain to spread word far and wide about the impeccably cultured mistress known as Applejack, that he met today at the Carousel Boutique. She levelled a gaze at the blonde pony, who found herself sweating slightly at the prospect. And you don't want to make a bad impression on your potential clientele at the expedition, do you? It was that moment, and truly then, that the full weight of what the simple country pony had gotten into sunk into her mind. You mean to say I gotta talk like a full-blooded Manehattenite for the whole expedition? From the rooster crow till the cows come home? Darling, the expedition runs for 3 whole days. 3 whole days? Her green eyes widened with panic as her imagination ran away from her. 3 days of not getting herself kicked out of the convention. 3 days of talking to rich and mighty folks. 3 days of wearing makeup and dresses. 3 days away from her rightful spot at the farm. But worst of all, 3 days of speaking in a voice that was not her. I can't do it, Rarity. Y'all gotta believe me. I just can't do it. She found herself on her rear knees in front of the white unicorn, the expression on her face not unlike one pleading for her life. Y'all may as well have me killed by suffocation. I can't possibly live a whole 3 days talking like I never left the city. There's just no way. Applejack, please calm down, the seamstress soothed, masking her surprise at the earth pony's rather exuberant breakdown. She took the mare by the shoulders and held her until her breathing began to level out again. There was a minute or so of silence as the farmer released her panic and gained her senses. It was only then that the unicorn spoke again. That's why, starting from today, you and I will be practicing. We'll work with you and get you used to using your cultured voice more often. When the time comes, you'll be able to handle yourself at the EACE for all 3 days with ease. Applejack sat herself on the floor, hind limbs splayed. She stared at her 4 hooves, before looking back up at her friend. You really reckon I can do this? She asked. Rarity smiled back at her. Don't you fret. Just trust in your teacher, Rarity. And I promise you, you'll breeze into that expedition with nary a worry nor care. Just think of this as repayment from me for the help you'll be giving me. They held each other's gazes for a long while, before the earth pony finally gathered herself back on all 4 hooves. She looked back down at the shop floor in thoughtfulness, before fixing the unicorn with a determined gaze. If y'all, if you really think so, then I'll trust in you. She could only give a pained smile as her friend favoured her with a wide grin. And that's how it went for the following days leading up to the convention. Applejack would arrive and see the designs that Rarity was working on, giving her comments and opinions on whether or not an outfit would appeal to a farmer, work pony, gardener or not. And then, once they had decided on a good look for a suit or dress, all attention would shift to the orange filly herself as they spent an hour having her speak in her sophisticated voice. So, Rarity exclaimed, seated at a tea table, a cup of Darjeeling levitating in front of her. How have things been going at the farm? Oh, they have been going quite well, Applejack replied, a biscotti cookie between her hooves as she studied it. There was no trace of her farm-hand drawl, as she continued. Applebloom recently saw a number of missing planks from the side of the barn, and before she gained the attention of Big Macintosh or I, she had set out repairing the damage herself. Oh, such an industrious little filly, indeed. She made no mention of it afterwards either, until I came in from the field and saw the fresh paint. She was afraid I would be mad, but... She stopped as she noticed her companion was giving her a look. What? Did I slip up again? A hoof pointed at her. You used one of your compounded, non-adverb shorthands again. The field is the proper usage. She sighed and leaned on the table, eyes redirected at her biscuit, before taking a bite out of it and munching with her mouth open. Just a little drip. The unicorn rolled her blue eyes. It's a biscotti, dear. It's supposed to be dipped. And usually you only dip it in coffee. Now do please mind your manners. The cowgirl groaned, before sitting back straight and swallowing her cookie, taking a sip of tea right afterwards. She cleared her throat again and closed her eyes. I apologize for my momentary lapse in etiquette. No harm done. Rarity beamed, her mood instantly improved. We all have our moments. Now then, please, do continue with your story. Applebloom didn't tell you about her repairs. Right. Applejack began again, only a trace of drawl in that first word. Well, I began inquiring around the farm about the new planks. Big Macintosh had no idea what it was about, and we both knew that Granny Smith was not in good enough health to possibly do them herself. We even hunted down the hired help, Caramel, to see if she knew anything about it, but he didn't. And did Applebloom come forward then? Well, she was the last one we had left to ask, and I remembered the repair work she had done on the old treehouse. It took a little coaxing, but she confessed to it. And you showed her you weren't mad, right? Darn tootin', she blasted out, chest swelling with pride. I right out and told her that anything else we found broke down, she twere more than welcome to take a shot at fixing it up. She may not be a carpenter, but she sure showed she knew how to handle a hammer and saw. I even told her, The farm pony blushed and looked down as she realized her lapse in speech. Sorry about that. Oh no, it's quite all right, the unicorn said through a strained smile. She couldn't really blame her friend for falling back into her accent. She was proud of her sister after all. Still, with the southern drawl, came back all the grammar complications and mangled words that made her put her teeth on edge. I think that's enough for today, she continued, staring up from the table and trotting back towards one of the clothed mannequins. I need to finish the last few stitches on this outfit, and then we'll have 6 of them done. Not bad for a week's plus of work, don't you think? If you say so, Applejack replied as she stood herself and trotted to another mannequin to retrieve her hat. Silently, she was relieved to have the session over with, though she felt bad about letting her friend down. I'm awful sorry about that, Rarity. I only fancy talked for about 2 days when I went to Manhattan, you know. It's no problem, the white pony assured, though her face was still directed towards the dress. It takes time, and we still have a few days left before the expedition starts. I'm certain we'll have you used to speaking without an accent well before that time. The farm pony tossed her head on before she directed a glare back to her friend. I told ya, I don't have an accent. Yes, I know, came the reply, a hoof waved dismissively in her direction. In the meantime, I think you'd best get your wares organized. Mr. Marmalade will be bringing a chariot to take our supplies to the expedition the day before. That reminds me, where is the EACE being held this year? Oh, it's some city out in the heartland of Equestria. Yoklahoma City, I think. Right in the middle of cow country, the blonde mused, a hoof stroking her chin in contemplation. Lot of farming and growing up around these parts. You're sure you even need to use my set advice there? Now, Applejack, don't you go looking for excuses now. The white pony brought her head up from her work and gave her a stern look. Just because it's being held in a centre of agriculture industry does not mean the ponies there will speak as plainly as you do. Besides, you've already made so much progress, it'd be a shame to let it waste away now. There was a sigh as Applejack lowered her head. I know. I guess I'll see you tomorrow then. Bright and early as usual, right? Rarity's look softened as the farmer clocked towards the door. Oh, of course, dear. Now don't be so glum. Just remember, this is all for your own good. There was barely a perceivable nod as the earth pony walked out of the boutique. Out in the fresh air and sunshine again, she felt her spirits pick up as she began to make her way back to Sweet Apple Acres. She is right, she found herself musing. She's trying her best to help me and make a good impression on the rich folks, and she already helped me get a spot at the expo. I just need to start dragging my hooves about it. She looked up in the sky as she took a deep breath and sighed. I just can't help but feel this whole high-class thing has been dishonest with myself. The day arrived. Within 24 hours a pair of wagons would appear, bearing Mr. Marmalade's cutie mark, to unload precious cargo to Yoklahoma City. The day after, the Equestrian Agriculture Conference and Expedition would begin. Rarity's boutique had been prepped and locked up, the unicorn herself running around all 10 outfits awaiting unloading. She would add a stitch there, prep a piece of fabric there, and would no doubt be fussing over the garments well until the day the convention doors opened. Occasionally her eyes would glance over to a box she had prepared the past 2 weeks in secret. I just know she's going to look fabulous in it, she thought to herself. Applejack, in the meantime, had her hooves full. She currently had 4 pies in the oven. Granny Smith was working on the last of the caramel apples. Big Mac was out back, picking the best-looking ripe apples that he could find for display, and Apple Bloom was currently trying her best to convince her big sister that she should come along too. "But sis, I can help. I know I can. Y'all just have to give me the chance," she shouted, maid bobbing as she practically bounced in place beside her sibling in the Apple family kitchen. The farm filly couldn't talk on account of her mouth being full of pot pad, and she hoisted a hot apple pie out of the oven. As soon as it was settled on a cooling rack, however, she was quick to give a response. "Sorry, Sugar Cube, but I barely managed to get my own self attached to this here expo, and there's nowhere I could ask Mr. Marmalade to back our waterfall pony. Plus, not to go robbing chickens droppings in the laundry, but I still remember what happened last time y'all helped me sell apples." "Oh," the yellow pony whined, her head and eyes dropping low. "I thought you wouldn't mention that again." Applejack chuckled before rubbing her sister's head. "I tell you what, run upstairs and get watched up. If nothing else, you can have your helping taking pies to the wagon once it gets here." "Sure thing, sis," the filly exclaimed, eyes all alight once more before she scampered out the kitchen. There was a soft chuckle from a corner of the room as Granny Smith watched her go, a line of caramel apples building on the table. "Land sakes, the young un sure knows how to scuttle, don't he?" "She sure does," the farm pony agreed, a smile on her face. It held there for a second before it collapsed as she turned to her grandmother. "Am I making the right choice here, Granny? This could happen put the farm on stable ground finally. But to make it happen, I'm going to have to act like a city pony again. And I don't remember how crossways y'all were when I first went to Manhattan." There was a wave of a hoof as the old mare pushed at her. "'Tis all in the past, AJ. Y'all have to do what you have to do. The only thing I draw a line at is when they make you put on a bear suit and do the whirling dervish. I'll have no part of those stallion grind hypes, you hear?" "I hear, Granny," Applejack agreed, though her face was a picture of amused bewilderment. Don't worry. All we're doing is heading out to Yoklahoma City and selling apples. We're bound to make some dough for sure." Granny simply nodded with a smile as she picked up another apple and dipped it in caramel goodness. As she sat it down to harden, she fixed her granddaughter with another look. "How've those speech classes your fans been giving you going?" The orange horse almost dropped the next pie she had been hauling out of the oven. As soon as her mouth was free, she stammered, Pretty okay. I think I can handle them big city folks without making myself look like too much like a fool now." "Can you show me?" Beads of sweat collected on her brow. Her granny was asking her to talk sophisticated for her. Well, it's Granny Smith asking, can't rightly say no to her. She brought a hoof to her chest as she cleared her throat. If you want, Granny Smith, I have to say I'm not comfortable talking like this. I've been rehearsing strictly for the expedition, but, well, since you asked." There was a gallop of small hooves before Apple Bloom reappeared at the kitchen door, her mane hastily combed and still slightly damp. "Hey, sis, where do y'all want me to put the pies when the wagons get here?" Applejack turned to her sister with a smile. "Oh, you need not worry about that yet, Apple Bloom. They probably won't arrive until later this evening." The smaller filly stared blankly at her big sister before she spoke. "Applejack, what the hey happened to your voice?" There was a second of confusion, followed by a widening of the eyes and blushing of the cheeks. "Oh, sorry about that, Sugar Cube. I was just practicing, you see. You know, like..." "She has to talk like a city pony at the expo," Granny Smith spoke up. saving her granddaughter. "She's done it before, if you all remember." "Oh yeah," Applebloom drawled, her eyes widening. "When you told us your cutie mark story, is that how you sounded when you visit Aunt and Uncle Orange?" "Sorta." The orange equine looked to the side, before standing on all four hooves. "I tweren't any good at it at the time, but if I'm to fit in at the expedition without them throwing me out like a barrel of scampi apples, I gotta sound like the rest of the city folk." Oh, if I sound like a city pony, could I come then?" I believe I can come along if I sound all high class, yes." There was a round of laughter at Applebloom's poor imitation, leaving the filly with an embarrassed blush and set of downturned ears. She squeaked, however, as she was suddenly embraced by a sister. "Oh, don't be too quick to try and pick up on something I done rightly like myself. Let me tell yez, it ain't no fun at all." If you say so, sis," she sighed. She was released, and she headed out to the front door to watch for their transportation. Granny Smith couldn't help but laugh a few minutes more. The blonde could tell if she was laughing about her sister's eagerness or her own reluctance. Deciding not to raise the issue, she sighed as she grabbed the pot pad again to extract the last apple pie. She didn't hear the larger set of hoof steps working their way into the kitchen. "Oh, there you are!" came an exclamation. Applejack flinched and dropped her pad as she recognized the voice of the white mare she had spent the last 2 weeks with. "Hey, Rarity," she greeted as she turned around. "'Twasn't expecting y'all round so early. The carts haven't arrived yet, have they?" "No, they haven't," the unicorn conceded. "But that wasn't the point of why I came. You see, well," there was a pawing at the floor. It was only now that the farmer realized that there was a saddlebag strapped to her friend's back. Sticking out of the left bag was a large pink box. "Rarity," she began, her eyes widening. "Yeah, I didn't." The blue eyes looked back up with a sheepish expression. I wanted to repay you for everything you've done, so I went and..." Instead of continuing, Rarity's horn lit up as the package floated out of her bag. It levitated towards the earth pony before the top lifted up, displaying its contents. She could tell this much: it was white and frilly. "To match your exquisite voice, dear," came the explanation. "Made especially for the EACE." Applejack was floored and sweating. She had originally been intending on wearing her gala outfit, but as she thought about it, it made sense that her friend would pull something like this. She began to look around in a panicked manner for an exit. Any exit out of the room. Busting out the window and getting glass embedded in her flank seemed like the better option when compared to wearing Rarity's newest frou-frou concoction. She faced Granny Smith for help, but all she got from that direction was a look of amusement. The old tart was enjoying her discomfort. Finally she sighed, defeated, before looking back at the unicorn. "Thank you kindly, Rarity. Guessing y'all want me to try it on before we go." She got a grin. "Applejack, you read my mind. Now let's go upstairs, dear," Rarity said as she turned around. There was a look back along with a proud smile. "We'll make a high-class diva out of you yet, darling." The apple bucker's ears drooped as she followed her friend out. The elderly green pony simply watched them go, before she let out that snicker she had building up. "Phew, we finally made it. Took us long enough." "Oh yes, but it was all worth it." I sure hope it is." Rarity simply beamed as she took in the scene before her. The trip to Oklahoma City itself had been uneventful enough. To every pony's relief, their wares had been checked in and their stalls found. Applejack had told Mr. Marmalade that she didn't require much space, her stand not being wider than 2 ponies' lengths. As a result, Rarity's display took up the majority of the space. Not that it didn't need it. She had put each and every outfit she had prepared up on a pedestal with lights with 10 outfits. And with 10 outfits, that took up a fair amount of room. Now both Unicorn and Earth Pony stood outside the respective vendors, taking in the multitude of ponies that trotted around the expedition area. As of yet, the doors had not opened, and so the ones that were milling around were either organizers or were setting up their own stalls. Rarity herself was adorned in a gown that was cut short enough to show a bit of tail and hind leg. There were points of amber lined around her neck, as a shinier fabric traced the hems. Applejack pawed at the ground restlessly as she looked herself over. Before they had even entered the building, her friend had insisted she be in character. Her blonde locks were once again done up in a mountain fashion, and the dress, it fit well and loosely, and the farm pony still felt it was squeezing the life out of her. It was a Southern Belle's dress, with enough of a bouffant in the back to make her feel like a whale, dainty ruffled sleeves, and to top it off, a pearl necklace that weighed like a ball and chain. She desperately wished for her hat. "I don't know about you," the white mare gushed, "but I am so stoked for this. To use a word from Rainbow Dash's vocabulary." She brought another brush to her, nervously grooming her mane once more. "Our names are going to be on the top of every rich pony's list." I hear you," the farmer replied, trying her best not to let her speech slip this time. Slip, and she may ruin any chance of profit for the farm. "So many ponies here. I would think at least one of them would appreciate a good apple and dress or two." She gave a look at her friend for the interjection. "I would still like to get out and about before the day is done, though. I spy a plough display over in that corner, and I do not see one that would be right for Big Mac's size." "Oh, you'll have plenty of time for that, dear," Rarity assured. "Maybe we can get some time to ourselves on the third day. Hopefully they won't have sold out of any—" "Ladies," came a grandiose voice. They both looked up in time to see Mr. Marmalade approaching the two. "So glad you were able to make it. Oh, Madam Rarity, Madam Applejack, you both are simply looking fabulous." He took a look at the two mares and the stalls behind them before turning to look at the scenery around them. "Isn't this all just so grand? All the wares to be seen, all the innovations, all the wonderful ponies. This is sure to be the best expedition yet." Applejack gagged on the inside of the words, and a quick glance at Rarity told her friend was thinking much the same thing. However, they quickly put aside their feelings of doom as the white mare spoke up. "Oh, you're absolutely right, darling, and my friend, I owe it all to you for our chance to attend this prestigious affair." I concur," the orange filly quipped. "I should have asked Rarity to have taught me some advanced words too." The stallion favoured the both of them with a wide smile before turning all business. "The doors will be opening in less than 3 minutes. Have you fillies got anything? Yes? Good to hear. Now, get ready at your stations. Those ponies will be coming in like a tidal wave, I swear." He took this moment to clutch at each pony's hoof with his own, leaving each with a slight blush on their faces. "I wish the both of you tremendous luck today. Let's hope we all do well. Now, I must rush to the opening ceremony. Until later, my fillies. Toodaloo." "Toodaloo," they both echoed once more, as the brown horse galloped away. They stood there for a second before facing each other. They could hear the background hubbub beginning to increase in volume. "Applejack," Rarity began, "good luck to you. Your apples will be sure to sell here. I know they will." "Thanks," she replied, city voice still in place. "I wish you good luck as well, and again, thank you for giving me this chance." "It's no trouble at all, darling," the unicorn said, as she turned to enter her stall. "We'll talk again soon. Until then, remember, no Ack-cent." The apple bucker nodded to her friend as she took position behind her own stad. As she trotted, however, she let a mumble escape her lips. "I don't got no hay tossin' Ack-cent." Business was indeed far better than it had ever been at the Gala. Flow kept up from a steady direction, which worked to Applejack's advantage. Ponies would run into Rarity's boutique, stand first, mill around or buy something in there, and then come out starving, spotting and making a beeline for sweet Applejack's stand. Apparently being a clothes horse made you hungry. She noticed that a fair number of her customers were farm ponies like herself. She was tempted to keep her guard down when around these friendly faces. However, she kept her guise of sophistication as she greeted them. She sold them apples and chatted. Half the day was already gone when she hauled out her third bushel of red delicious onto the stand. As she turned back around, she noticed there was already a small two-pony line waiting for her. "Oh," she exclaimed, "I beg your pardon, I was just getting some more stock out." The farmer quickly trotted back behind her stand as the two fillies stepped up. "Sweet Applejack's fresh farm apples. Would you care to try some?" Said the left pony. He was a light grey earth pony with a straight-haired charcoal maid, purple eyes gazing over the wares. "What do you think, Sissy Pie? Those fritters sure look good." "I don't know," replied the other filly. She was a slate blue with a dusty grey mane that was cut short over her own golden eyes. "The caramel apples look the best to me. How much for one of those?" "5 bits," Applejack replied in an even voice. "And the fritters are 7 apiece. However, if you want, I could let you have both for 10 bits." She gave them a half-littered smile, which they both lit up at. "We'll take 'em." Money was deposited, and apples were given. They proceeded to dig into them right there in front of the stand. She didn't mind. She loved seeing ponies enjoy her apples. This was good," the grey mare mumbled around her fritter. She swallowed before continuing. "We should bring some back for big Sissy Pie." "We should," the blue one agreed. "Do you have any pink ladies? She would love that." The farmer smirked. "With all the talk of pies you two have been going on about, I'm surprised you all haven't asked one of those." They both looked back at her. She brought her hooves to her mouth as she realized what she'd done. I'm so sorry," she gushed, now panicked like never before. "Please don't tell anyone I slipped. It was an accident, I swear. I'll even give you free apples. You can even—" Whoa, the dusty grey pony soothed. "Calm down. We won't tell any pony, will we, Sissy Pie?" "That's right," the darker mare agreed. "If it means that much to you, we'll keep quiet. Besides," the grey pony continued, "there's nothing wrong with being honest with yourself." That hit a chord inside Applejack. She hadn't given thought to it in that manner since that day a week ago. The more she thought about it, the more it ate at her. Here she was, at the biggest farmers' convention in all of Equestria, and what was she doing? Wearing a ballroom gown and speaking in a hobnob voice in an attempt to fit in. "Miss? Are you all right?" She shook her head as she brought her mind back to the here and now. Oh yes, I am. Thank you. I'm awfully sorry about this. This is just my one big chance to help my farm, and I don't want to mess it up." "We could understand that," the darker of the two equines replied. "We come from a rock farm, and unless the rocks are pretty or valuable, we don't make a lot of money either." Her sister nodded in agreement. "Ouch!" the orange one responded. She looked over her own wares before ducking under the strand to retrieve a bag, filling it with rose-tinted apples. "You know what? Here we have a bag of pink ladies just as ordered. And an apple pie too, on the house." Their eyes widened. Oh, we can't possibly." "Don't go stammering on me now." She spoke to the two, her twang briefly resurfacing. She gave them a thankful look. "Just think of these as gifts for your Sissy Pie. I bet she'll love them." They looked at each other before nodding and giving smiles to their vendor. The slate one carefully placed a pie on her back as she gushed. "Oh boy, Maggie Pie, this expo really is turning out to be the best." "You said it, Inky Pie," her sister cheered, placing the bag of apples into a saddlebag. "I just know Pinky is going to love these." "Thank you, madame." "Thank you, ma'am." Applejack waved the both of them farewell as they blended back into the stream of ponies clopping through the aisles. Her mind was still awhirl with the thoughts the two had unwittingly imparted onto her, but she shook her head, deciding that thinking on that track wasn't going to help sell apples now, and she would need to upsell now after having given the pie. Wait. "Pink ladies?" she muttered to herself. "Rock farm? Inky? Maggie? Pinky? Pies?" "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be. When we get to Ponyville, she'll be telling us all about the pie her sisters gave her." "How uncanny!" Rarity exclaimed. "To think we've run into some of the Pinkie Pie's family here at the expedition." Applejack rolled her eyes as she rested her head on her stand's counter. The stock that she had set aside for today had run empty. Only a half-full bushel of galas left on display. It was getting close to the evening, and she was quite thankful for it. The day had worn hard on her. Though she couldn't complain, her money bucket was filled to the brim with bits. Well, they are farmers after all," she replied, looking around at the ponies still milling about. "They may show up again, so keep your eyes peeled. They may want to buy a dress next time. Speaking of which, how has your business done today?" "Oh, simply amazing! I was quite surprised that the redesigned outfit we did for you was the most popular on the list. Got no less than 15 orders for it. For a second, the unicorn looked faint before she recovered and continued. And your gala dress was such a hit as well. And of course, I took plenty of custom orders too. I say, Applejack, if this keeps up, I'm going to have to actually start hiring help for the boutique. That's a good sign, the farmer assured, lifting her head slightly. If I have any leftover bits after getting the farm fixed up, I might hire on some help myself. The acres could really use it. There was a nod before the white mare found herself stretching, joints popping as she worked her limbs. My stars, it's been a long day. I think I'm ready to close up and walk around and sightsee. How about you? Sounds good to me, Applejack replied, as she stood up and took a hanging rope in her mouth, bringing the stall's sign to collapse inward on the counter. If we're lucky, they may still have those ploughs in stock. She got a nod as the unicorn's horn lit up, drawing the curtains closed on her own stall. After a couple seconds of securing booths and packing their gaze, the two fillies began walking side by side, slipping into the stream of equines that were still wandering about at this late hour. Applejack, Rarity began, causing the orange one to glance at her friend. I just want to tell you how proud I am that you've kept up your classical training for the whole of today. She turned those sapphire blue eyes on her, a giddy grin plastered on her face. And to think we still have 2 more days. Keep this up and I promise you, your future will be so much brighter. The farm filly's ears turned downwards. Once again, the words of that grey mare echoed in her head. I hate this, she thought to herself, but Rarity's still right, and I can't let her down now. Just 2 more days, she murmured. Then I can put this voice behind me. A white ear flicked back. Oh dear, of course you can go back to speaking plainly again, but not until we're out of these hollowed halls. Besides, I don't think you'll want to throw it away entirely. There are various other conventions all over Equestria, and a pony of our class could very well be entitled to be invited to every one. Her eyes sparkled at the prospect. In contrast, the colour drained from AJ's face. More parties? More speaking like a... Maid Moiselles, came a familiar booming voice. The two of them jumped and whirled to find Mr. Marmalade trotting up to them rapidly. How was today for you both? I hope your enterprises saw adequate fortune? Oh, they most certainly did, good sir, Rarity cooed, slipping into her most relaxed and noble tone. The ponies of Yoklahoma City have such exquisite tastes. I wasn't certain if the dresses that Applejack and I designed would be such a hit, but they were. Splendid, the stallion grinned, before turning his attention towards the earth pony. And you, my dear, how well did your apple goods fare? That they did well, Applejack stuttered, trying to recover from her earlier surprise. Far better than they ever did when I went to the Grand Galloping Gala. I'll be able to make some much-needed improvements to the farm once the expedition is over. This brought a bigger smile to Marmalade's face than she thought was healthy. That's just what I wanted to hear, Madam Applejack. You're the perfect pony, a respectable citizen with a deep tie to a farm. You're just what I'm looking for. Hurry, come with me. He did an about-face and began galloping, ponies scattering to the left and right as he ploughed a path through them. The two females were left gaping for a second, before they hurried to catch up with him. Mr. Marmalade, what's all this about? Rarity called out, trying her best to run elegantly without causing too much bounce in her outfit. An opening speech, that's what, came the answer. In about 20 minutes the last panel of the night will begin, on the relations of the agriculture industry with that of its consumer base. Originally, we had another speaker to open it, but unfortunately he was unable to make it in time. Instantly, my thoughts turned to you, Madam Applejack, for you appear to be closely connected with the workings of the farmland for one so cultured. Applejack was already having enough trouble not tripping over her dress. This bit of information did nothing to help matters. You want me to speak? She managed to squeak out, voice faltering between Manhattan and Appaloosa. Indeed, nothing incredibly long. Mind you, all you need to do is tell us a little bit about yourself, about your farm, and about the time you've had here so far. You know, give us your honest opinions. Rarity turned to gaze at her friend as they ran. With a supportive look, it went unnoticed, as the farmer had her eyes unfocused staring into nothing as they made their way to the hall. Okay, 1 minute. Good luck, darling. But... Applejack barely managed to stammer as she was shoved onto this darkened stage. Even with the lights down, the blonde filly could see the hall was practically packed with ponies. She was shaking in her hooves, and the murmur of the room was practically a roar in her ears. She looked off to the side once more, not certain if it had been Marmalade or Rarity that had shoved her out there. They were giving her hopeful and supporting gazes. "Remember," the unicorn whispered, "your speech." She could only gulp as she turned back towards the stage. There was a podium right in the centre, and she dutifully, though reluctantly, trotted up to it. As soon as she had her 4 hooves on the desk, a spotlight flared to life, bathing the orange pony in a brilliant glare, causing her pearls and dresses to glisten. Out of the audience there was a bout of cheering, as well as a few whistles of appreciation. Off to her side, she thought she heard Rarity sighing in contentment. Greetings, she managed to squeeze out. There was another wave of cheers, accompanied by hoof stomps and claps. I am here in placement of Minister Juniper Jams, who was unable to attend this year's Equestrian Agriculture Conference and Expedition. Her heart eased its pounding in her head as she tuned the crowd out, letting her own words fill her ears. Mr. Marmalade has asked that I open up our talk today instead, so let me tell you a bit about myself. My name is Applejack. I run a farm, not unlike many of you here today. She got a few cheers of support at that, and at least 3 right arms. Many of you may have heard of Sweet Apple Acres. Why, I believe some of you have even been to my stall today, haven't you? A good portion of the crowd erupted in yet another cheer, louder than the last. This brought a smile to her face, as her nerves finally managed to calm down. With the calm, however, came a loosening of discipline. She felt her tongue wanting to move in traitorous ways, her lips to make sounds not fit for noble halls. She smacked herself dryly as she waited for the cheer to subside. A glass of water would be heavenly right about now. I'm glad you all enjoyed them, she continued. Once she could hear herself think again, trained voice still in place. It really warms my heart to see that. The Apple family has been in the apple business for generations, and you can find apples grown by us in almost every corner of Equestria. Sweet Apple Acres, in particular, is based right out of Ponyville, where we keep some of our most cherished family traditions alive. She closed her eyes as she thought back to the farm. For years, we've put the same thing into all our apples that our forefathers did before us. Tender, loving care, good and responsible practices, and lots of down-to-earth, hard, honest work. She opened her eyes. She looked at the crowd. She then looked back down at her dress. A farmer pony, dressed up as a frou-frou pony, talking like a frou-frou pony to a bunch of other frou-frou ponies at a farmer's convention? Her eye twitched. This was stupid. This was more than just stupid. This just wasn't right. Down in the audience, a dusty grey filly eeped as she felt a tingle go over her body. This was quickly followed by an all-body jitter as she began to vibrate in place. Sissy pie, she stuttered, voice vibrating as she did. Something's about to happen. Inky Pie watched her sister's antics. Her eyes widened. Are you sure, Maggie? I haven't felt anything yet. Back in Ponyville, inside Sugar Cube Corner, the bakery's #1 employee was in the process of handing a tray of meringue cookies over to an eager purple dragon, when the treats suddenly vibrated off their platter. Green eyes widened in panic as the earth pony began to shudder in place. Pinky! Spike yelped. What's going on? Is something going to happen? Is it twilight? I don't know, the pink filly stammered, but I can tell it's not twilight. Who then? The dragon panicked. Rarity? Rainbow Dash? Or Fluttershy? Did Fluttershy explode? Applejack. At a rock farm somewhere between Ponyville and Cloudsdale, an elderly earth pony couple leaned back in their rocking chairs, sighing in relief at the peace and quiet they now had all to themselves. The tall brown stallion closed his eyes. hat drooping over his face. You know, I may not be an up-to-date pony, but I have to thank today's world for giving the kids a distraction. I'll say, the green mare replied, her hooves busy in darning a sock. Inky and Maggie are probably having themselves a blast. There was a chuckle. They've always had a blast, ever since Pinky got her cutie mark. Sometimes I wonder if they'll really stay, or if they'll follow their sister and move back to Ponyville. We should visit Pinky, Mother Pie stated, looking evenly over her spectacles. Ponyville's not a bad place, you know. I've been there. We could always drop in on the apple farm. See if old Tart Smith's still hanging. She paused at her rocking. Her eyes widened. Papa Pie kept his eyes evenly on her, even when her tail began twitching, followed by her backside, proceeding up her spine towards her forehooves, ending at her head as she shimmied in an impromptu seizure. Who is it this time? He asked, only mildly curious. Can't tell, he stated, her own voice remaining calm even as she shook. But they're in Oklahoma City. Oh, wait, Inky stated. She felt the tingling herself, and then before she knew it, she was imitating her sister in her vibrating pose. There it goes. Why are you always so late? Maggie questioned her sister, managing to raise an eyebrow through her shaking. Applejack looked down, her mind apparently made up. She looked over to the side and caught Rarity's eyes. She gave the unicorn a sad look as she said in perfect Manehattenite, I'm sorry, Sugar Cube. And then she turned back to the crowd. But I can't keep this haystack and act up anymore. There was a ripple of amazement that coursed through the crowd. The white filly's eyes shrunk in panic. Mr. Marmalade kept his silence as he watched the apple bucket proceed to rant. I got invited out here to this expedition, all 'cause I had a fancy voice. I've got to tell you right now, that voice tain't me. This is me. Y'all want to know how the apple family gets the apples so good? Let me tell you, me and my big brother Mac go out there, and we bark those trees ourselves. I tain't no fancy apple baron. I like to get my hooves dirty. I'm a farmer, and this con's supposed to be for farmers. So how come I gotta break out my Manehattenite frou-frou talk? I tried to be sophisticated once, a long time ago. 'Twasn't me then, and it sure tain't me now. So go on. Y'all know I tain't fancy a frou-frou, a high class, or what have you. I don't want to be one no more. Throw me out. Toss me in the mud for all I care. Just as long as I can stop lying, be true, and sound like myself. She panted, her frustrations now fully vented, the hall still echoing with her words. She allowed her green eyes to travel over the hushed occupants of the room. She allowed herself another glance over to Rarity, who appeared to be in the midst of a heart attack. The expression on Marmalade's face remained unreadable. Well, 'twere a good run, she thought to herself. I won't be sticking round for the other 2 days, but that's all right. I made enough today to do some fixing up on the farm. If I never get invited to anywhere ever again, I think I'll be able to live. Sorry about that, Rarity, but I'm done living a lie. The orange mare stood there, in the silence, the lone spotlight still beating down on her. She awaited the audience's reaction. She didn't have to wait very long. As one, each and every pony in the room let out a single word. Hoo-wee! Followed by someone in the back yelling out, "'Bout darn time, some pony said." And then the murmur came rolling back, but this time with a different flavour to its melody. Rarity's expression shifted from panic to outright shock, as she noticed that each and every single equine in the room had suddenly lost any traces of cultured upbringing in their voices. The conversation of the hall was dominated with the thick, syrupy drawl of a southern accent. Ponies were sighing with relief, hugging each other, laughing and bucking with joy, as the earlier tension completely dissolved away, leaving behind an air of gratitude as they all relaxed, letting their natural speech and voices shine through. Applejack, quite obviously, had not expected this outcome either. She remained rooted to her spot behind the pedestal, eyes wide and unbelieving, jaw slack and hanging open. She barely registered the approach of 2 ponies up to her right side. Applejack! She slowly turned her head. Her friend stood there beside her, the unicorn's face a mixture of emotions warring for domination. shock, pride, joy, and sorrow. Her heart weighed heavy in her own chest as she took it in. That was beautiful, Applejack, Rarity began, stretching her hoof out and placing it on the father's shoulder. I'm sorry, I had no idea. She turned to look back at the crowd, yee-haws and whoops rising from its surface every now and then. I really had no idea. She looked back. How can I ever make it up to you? Unbidden, tears began to spring from the corners of the orange one's eyes. She raised her hooves up and unclasped her pearl necklace that had felt so much like a burden. As she handed them back to Rarity, she brought her hooves back to her mane and tugged at the bouffant. It gave way, blonde strands cascading down her back as she gave a shake of her head. The weight of the world off her shoulders, she looked back at the white mare, head turned downwards, tears still flowing. I want my hat back. The unicorn found herself tearing up as well, as she walked forward and nuzzled her friend. Okay, dear, let's go and get your hat. The restaurant was abuzz with laughter and the twang of cow talk. The waiters had been taken aback when the conventioneers came in sounding like southern folks, compared to the cultured tone their customers had the years previous. Business was still business, however, and they would be mad to turn it away for any reason, especially if one of their customers was Mr. Mango Marmalade and his party of 4, who were currently occupying a private booth secluded from the rest of the restaurant. A steady stream of hay fries and bean burgers flowed into the booth, as its occupants relaxed from the harrowing day beforehand. Whoosh! Applejack breathed, coming up for air from her chocolate oat malt. Sure feels good to eat like a real pony again. She gave her mane another shake, her customary hat and hairband back in place, with nary a sign of dress to be seen. I'd forgotten how hungry being a sophisticated pony made ya. I can see that, Rarity stated evenly, though her eyes were still wide as she noted that the farmer was now in her 4th shake. I've never had such a reaction myself, I must admit. I suppose it differs from pony to pony. It really does, came a voice from the unicorn's left. She turned to face Maggie Pie and her sister, the both of them slowly but steadily sharing and working through a stack of fries. Back on the farm, before she got her cutie mark, Pinky barely ate 4 muffins a day. Afterwards, however, she couldn't seem to get enough food in her. It's one of the reasons she moved away. One of the many reasons, Inky spoke, rolling her eyes. But that's all beside the point, isn't it? Mr. Marmalade nodded, sitting at the far end next to Applejack. The expedition folks were all like me, the orange filly stated, her mind still reeling from the thought. They all thought that if they went and spoke plain like, they'd get kicked out too. So they never said nothing otherwise, and this has been going on for so long. Well, it kinda got out of hand, didn't it? She turned to the browed stallion again, who only dipped his head once more with a sheepish expression. It rather caught me off guard, Rarity confessed as she daintily sipped her lemon tea. I mean, I had no idea all the sophisticated and cultured airs that every pony was putting on were so forced. I had taken the entire thing for granted, being the kind of pony I am. She found herself blushing, realizing that she was now a minority, a city pony in a town full of cowfolk. We saw it coming, Inky quipped, her mouth still full of fries. Before we came to Miss Applejack's stand, the last 2 stands we visited also slipped their speech. The apple bucker gaped at the 2 rock fathers. I was your 3rd one, and y'all didn't tell me? How could we? The lighter of the 2 mares responded. They asked us to keep quiet too, same as you did. She blushed as she looked down. Makes sense considering. We were all kinda scared. At least, I know I was. She looked up as she felt her shuffling. The white unicorn edged herself close to the earth pony's side as she locked eyes. Applejack, I am so sorry. I had no idea that you felt so oppressed by all the culture that I was trying to help you with. I had no intention of instilling that kind of fear in you. I should have really known better than to force something onto you that you're not. I was just... She turned her sapphire eyes downward. I was really excited to have some pony to be high class with. Can you ever forgive me? Applejack let a smile come to her face as she nudged Rarity's cheek. I forgive you, Sugar Cube. I know you're just trying to help. Just got carried away like the rest of us. She smiled as she spotted the relief on her friend's face. And hey, maybe sometime if y'all be really needing it, I could be through for a day. That sound good? She asked before holding her hoof out. It was met with a white one in a clop, and they both shook on it. And I promise, the seamstress replied, I won't bother you any more about your accent. That is... There was a chuckle as the blonde tilted her hat back. Y'all can call it an accent if you want. To me and all the folks round here, 'tis just talking normal like. There was a round of clapping that made both farmer and dressmaker blush slightly before they turned back to their food. So, the lighter of the two grey fillies started, this means the EACA is still going on for the rest of the weekend, right? Marmalade nodded with a smile. And we get to keep both our stands? Applejack asked, her face a picture of hopefulness. He nodded once more with a grin. Even though we may or may not sound cultured? Rarity quipped, a look of curiosity on her features. Mr. Marmalade closed his eyes, before opening them and his mouth to speak for the first time that evening. Yup, he replied, in a drawl that would have made even Big Macintosh proud. Finn,